Alright, hello again to anyone watching these Kaijudo videos. Today I have another deck profile. This is on, I guess, another one of my kind of in-progress decks. It's something I built a while back. Basically, another, similar to the Light Water Dark Agarix Dragon deck I built. It's taking sort of an existing concept and incorporating a dragon package to see how it performs. So, this deck is pretty similar to the light dark fire mid-range decks that were in the standard format towards the end of the game. The Agarix, Serpens, Kyo, Kronax, Targusher, those are all cards that were commonly played in those decks, and it's a pretty synergistic package. And I decided to incorporate the Herald, especially just be as a way to get these dragons out a little bit faster. One of the problems with that Light Dark Fire mid-range deck was a lot of the time it was kind of difficult to actually, you had to spend a fair amount of time just kind of sitting back and trying to build up the land drops while still interacting with your opponent to try to get up to 8 mana, and it could be a little bit of a chore to do that. So being able to cheat them out a little bit faster with Herald, Herald just cheating on 7 or 8 mana is just busted in general, but getting your engine or your big powerful plays online sooner is always good. Herald also has just a ton of synergy with Kronax and Kyo. Those are cards you would already want to play with Agarix and Serpens, and they work just as well with Herald too. So I think it's a kind of neat deck and neat package that all works together. I will say that this deck, it could easily be playing stuff like Andromeda and Cassiopeia, and I'm kind of just copping out not playing those cards. And this is a kind of mid-range deck that just kind of gets dunked on by those giant stuff like Haven and Cass and Andromeda, that it just, when you curve out at 8 mana, especially in the standard or in the open format, if you're trying to play a mid-range deck like this, you just can't really compete with those other cards quite to the same degree, and it kind of feels like you're spewing by not playing those cards, which is kind of one of the issues with the format in general, that I think a lot of cards and strategies like this get kind of gate kept by those other cards, where if you're willing to play an 8 mana card like Agarix, you should be willing to play a 9 mana card like Andromeda likely. So it makes it kind of tough, but I decided to give it a shot, and the deck is pretty decent anyways. I haven't played a ton with it. This is maybe the second, or I played it, this is probably the second iteration, I would say. I played it a little bit, changed up a few cards, I've been trying a few different things, so it's definitely a solid deck. It plays pretty well, but yeah, I guess I'll go over the list. So the birds I play are Lux and the 1 Umbra. Just having the 2-drop, Lux does a good enough job just contending the board against stuff like Scamp and Blaze Belchers. It also just obviously being able to play out Herald a turn earlier, Lyra a turn earlier, Agarix, Serpens a turn earlier. It's just really strong. Even if you're not going all full out cheating in these giant dragons with Herald, it's still good enough to be able to basically have this sprout into Agarix, right? That's just good enough. And you can use the body well for stuff like Kronax even. So Lux just plays well with the deck and helps drop these fatties. I was saying, how it's a problem, can be a problem, and this deck can be a little slow trying to get up to Agarix to be that engine piece. Lux being able to help you speed up that process is just pretty important. Umbra is kind of just a supplemental bird. When I first built the deck, I think I had 2 or 3 copies, and I went back to 1. I don't even know if you really need it. It's really nice to have the first bird, but you're not really trying to play out 2 or 3. It's not like Lightwater Fire Dragons when you have Nyx. You'll just dump every bird you see, because the Nyx recuperates all those cards anyways. So with this deck though, you don't have that hand recuperation in the same way that Nyx gives you. So it's the second bird doesn't really do much for you. You play your second bird, and now you're out of a hand, and you can't really hit the land drops, so you can properly curve into something like Kyo or properly curve into Kronax. Yeah, it makes your dragons cheaper, but it just it's probably more valuable to have that second bird end up in your mana zone than it is to actually commit it to the board, I find. So you really get diminishing returns on the birds in this deck. So I think you really don't need to go full out on these. So I don't know what the sweet spot is. Maybe 4 is the sweet spot. It's nice to have the extra dark mana with Umbra as well. So I'm still playing 1 copy, but I could easily see this going. The Slayer effect is it probably doesn't come up enough for it to be too relevant. Ironwool Tree is a really nice card to interact or to protect you from some discard from the opponent. Again, when you're trying to assemble combos, especially as like a bit more of a mid-range deck without much card draw, protecting your hand can be important. The 1-2 punch of like Ironwool Tree and Keeper of Laws gives you a really strong game against actually the control decks. Not like an insanely strong game. You're obviously still an underdog, I would think, but still this package, like, it protects your hand, makes it difficult for your opponent to cast the spells as well, and it gives you a way to get some card advantage. And then also Laws just being a really strong card against control for beating down. When you can go like Bird, Herald, Laws, and start beating down, those are some good draws and gives you a chance to win. Targusher is just a nice mid-rangey card. The fact that it's a multi-civ kind of hurts, but it plays well with Kronax and Kyo, synergies with Herald, even, like, or not necessarily synergies, but the fact that it taps stuff and then you can Herald it just lets you have a lot of outs to kind of clear a board. If you can go just Kronax trade with Targusher and then you tap something else, clear that away with Herald, and then drop something. It just gives you a lot of options, which is really nice. Herald itself, I mean, not much to say. Just busted card, one of the cards we're abusing to make this kind of strategy actually playable in an open format. Kronax, just a card I really like. I think it's a really strong card. Helps you deal with hexproof creatures, lets you, gives your Herald a way to attack untapped things. Just super strong card, plays super well with Agric, super well with Serpents. Just a really, really versatile, strong card. Keeper of Laws, not much to say there. Just gives you, it's kind of the way for this deck to have a shot against like any of the control decks, any of the spell-based decks. Agric, just one of my favorite cards in the game, is like just a build around. Super sweet. Being able to rebuy things like Lyra in the open format is just so powerful. Yeah, this whole package. I love Serpents as well as a card. It's just super fun to play with. Just the synergies. It's always nice to like set up a field and then get 2 or 3 shields off of a Serpents in one turn. It's just super sweet. And then being able to follow up an Agric and attack with a big board and then banish a bunch of stuff. Like, there's just, the plays in this deck are really sweet to do. Serpents just being a nice dragon. Just when you're, again, like, the problem with Serpents is it's just a lot of mana for a card that doesn't really do much immediately. But when you're able to cheat it into play with a Herald, it's not such a big deal. Kyo has great synergy with the deck and gives you a good shield blast. Arbiter, just a super powerful card in general. And Rothis. This is a card I'm trying out. I think, as it stands, this deck is definitely light on like interaction for bigger creatures. I'm kind of leaning on like the Targushers and the Slayer aspect of Kronax, Lyra to tap them down. I think I was, in the previous iteration, I think I was playing Joko as testing that over Terrapit, just because Joko has some synergy with Serpents mainly. And the body from Joko, if you get that in shields early when it's not live, you can still leverage it with things like Kronax. So Joko was a card I was testing instead. I wanted to try Rothis just because I think the card's pretty powerful. The 4K body is pretty huge, especially coming out of shields. I think I talked about before in the top 10 fire cards when I was talking about Rothis, how like just being super good against Rush, where like the 4K body, if their board has some stronger minions or stronger creatures like Metal Max, you can use Rothis to contest the Metal Max, or if their board's a bunch of small creatures, you can just blow it up and blow up their whole board. So versatile card, pretty strong shield blast. But with Warchief Kyo and Arbiter and Rothis, you're pretty concentrated on stuff that deals with smaller creatures, so probably worth getting Terrapits in there instead. But I feel like Kyo has too much synergy to cut. Arbiter is just too powerful to cut. Another card I'm missing is Bone Blades. So It could be that like I don't even need Terra Pit. Maybe I want Bone Blades, but again, like the hole in this deck's answer suite is more to do with larger creatures. And on top of that, Bone Blades isn't as much a card I want to like. I'm not looking for removal to cast from hand so much as just powerful Shield Blast. Just because like Cronax would do the lifting where I would expect Bone Blades to, or Herald would do what Bone Blades is accomplishing as well, where it just kind of holds back their creatures. So between all these like cheap plays and cards I want to commit, and this deck wants to develop its hand or develop its board. Like Bone Blades is a powerful card; it's great for answering certain things, but I don't think it's really what I would want so much as just a powerful kind of catch-all Shield Blast. And I think Rothis would be more powerful for that than Bone Blades, but I probably am missing something like Terra Pit or Joko. That said, those cards, either like Terra Pit or Joko, could easily come in over any of these four on the bottom. Umbra, I've talked about already, how it's just kind of the extra bird. I don't think it's really necessary. Again, like this one, the second bird almost always goes to mana. The first one ends up in play. Sargon is just a card I'm testing. It's a sweet card, fancy card. I just don't think it's like, it's nice to have a fast attacker too. I just don't think it's really necessary, especially as a Fire Dark multi-civ. This could be pretty much anything else. It's nice to it's a cool card. It's good, but I don't really think it's any better than anything else out there, and it's probably worse. So Mesmerize is another card. I just kind of threw in 2 copies to round out the deck. I was a little light on 3-drops. I could play Lost Patrol or something, I guess. I could play another blocker. But Mesmerize was just one of the stronger 3-drops out there, so I decided to put it in. Gives a little bit of interaction so I can like pick apart my opponent's card draw. Like if my opponent's playing like a ramp deck, I can try to take away their Reap and Sows or their Mana Storms. If my opponent's playing a control deck with like Crystal Memories and Reverberates, I can try to pick apart those synergies. So it can help me deal with some of the cards that are problematic, like getting under a Broodmother before they can play it and get a bunch of cards in hand, or before they can play an Anjak. Like there's a lot of just mid-rangey super value cards that you want to answer profitably. Now the problem is like you're kind of losing on the tempo mana axis when you do that, but again, when I don't have a ton of 3-drops, Mesmerize is kind of okay on that front. But I'm not tied to this card. I don't think it's like, from what I've played, it hadn't really overperformed or really been that much better than anything else. Again, you want to be kind of playing to the board, so I don't think this random spell is like really accomplishing too much for you. So these are definitely like the 4 most flex slots. I think Rothis as well could be a different Shield Blast if I needed it to be. But for the most part, that's the deck I have so far. Again, performs pretty powerfully. It's fun to play. I don't know if it's definitely a powerful deck, but I just don't think in comparison to some of the other decks out there in open, it's definitely like maybe a little bit below below other decks on kind of that tier list, I guess. But it can still compete, playing a bunch of powerful cards anyway. So I think it's sweet. If anyone has any input, what cards they think might be missing, I could think of maybe something to give fast attack to Herald would be nice. Like maybe a 1 of Infernal Taskmaster could be playable in this deck over something like Sargon, or maybe you still even just get Jump Jets in there. I don't know. Like there are a lot of options. Yeah, anyone who has any input, let me know what your thoughts are on the deck, what you might change, what you think what you think could be done differently here. Yeah, as always, thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.